Sometimes things are so simple but create controversy without any context, and that is the case with the ESPN decision to roll out its women's sports Sundays this summer in place of Sunday Night Baseball. But, for many people, they're missing the point a little bit. The easy reaction comes because it's like America's pastime, baseball, bros, women's sports, virtue signaling. You could argue, I suppose, that the branding, women's sports Sundays, that
the sports world is still in shock after a move that caught everyone off guard. ESPN has officially canceled Sunday Night Baseball, but the real story, the one they're trying to keep under wraps, centers on a singular generational talent. Her magnetic presence is so undeniable, it forced an overhaul of primetime programming, revealing a level of influence few anticipated. This isn't just about a TV schedule, it's a seismic shift driven by an athlete whose reach extends far beyond the court. The aftershocks are already reshaping the entire league. Behind the scenes, this insider knowledge exposes the true force propelling the WNBA into a new era of mainstream dominance. Her impact absolutely unstoppable.
Sports Sundays, that all-encompassing branding could be taken that way, but isn't it okay that women's sports get a showcase? So I don't really see the problem. And then there's the sensible aspect of it, which is the WNBA being in the slot that Major League Baseball occupied. It's not like baseball's being canceled. That's one thing you have to remember. The agreement between Major League Baseball and ESPN ended after last season. So ESPN no longer has the television rights to Major League Baseball. So something was going to have to go in that slot.
When the backlash over women's sports Sundays taking over America's favorite pastime completely overlooked the hidden factors behind ESPN's bold decision. Critics rushed to label it virtue signaling or dismissed it as a woke move, but confidential sources reveal it was none of that. This wasn't about pushing an agenda, it was a calculated business strategy driven by shifting market realities and undeniable viewership patterns. The public outrage exposed a widespread misunderstanding of the financial and strategic thinking behind the change, masking the real, data-driven reasons for such a massive programming shift. The truth, far from superficial, carries consequences that are far more profound than most realize.
The agreement between Major League Baseball and ESPN ended after last season. So ESPN no longer has the television rights to Major League Baseball. So something was going to have to go in that slot. This is not a case of baseball's being bumped for women's sports. It's being replaced. It's been there 35 years, but they have no more media rights deal. And instead, you're going to get WNBA, NWSL, women's college basketball, and other women's sports taking that slot. Now, the WNBA women's college basketball is capable of popping a big rating. That's
the real reason baseball disappeared from that coveted Sunday night slot is a revelation most people completely missed. ESPN's deal with Major League Baseball officially expired last season. This wasn't just a minor shuffle or a cancellation. It left a massive primetime void that had to be filled. Suddenly, the network faced an unprecedented gap in its lineup, opening the door for a rising powerhouse to step in. This often overlooked fact is the key to understanding the programming shift. The replacement wasn't optional, it was inevitable, driven purely by market influence and undeniable audience demand.
But as far as women's sports Sundays in the summer, the WNBA makes perfect sense as a replacement, and there's even like a ratings argument there. Sunday Night Baseball was averaging about 1.5 million viewers, a little over 1.5 million viewers on ESPN. The WNBA is perfectly capable of hitting those numbers. In fact, the WNBA averaged 1.3 million viewers for games on ESPN in 2025. And when you look at the matchups that ESPN is able to create on Sunday nights here, you can get some really marquee ones. The Fever play the...
With baseball off the schedule, ESPN strategically placed the WNBA, NWSL, and women's college basketball into that primetime spotlight. But it quickly became obvious that only one sport, powered by a single transcendent star, had the immediate clout to carry this high-stakes gamble and deliver the ratings. This wasn't about a collective push to draw viewers. It was a deliberate move, a calculated bet on the magnetic influence of one superstar to anchor an entirely new broadcast initiative. The network knew exactly where the real leverage was, and they acted decisively.
The Sky and the Fever, the season opener last year was like 2-something million viewers, more than that. That was on ABC, so I didn't include it in this article right here because it's not quite apples to apples. Broadcast network television is still bigger than cable television at this point in time. But nonetheless, it shows you the numbers that they're capable of popping. And then if you put the Fever and Clark in those games, they're just going to naturally be higher. And then if you put the Fever and Clark in those games against teams with other stars or other, marquee names in the league,
the ratings reveal a shocker. The WNBA is already matching, and in some cases poised to surpass, Sunday Night Baseball's 1.5 million viewer benchmark. This isn't theory, it's proven results, though the mainstream media hasn't given it the attention it demands. Internal ESPN reports show that WNBA broadcast averaged 1.3 million viewers in 2025, nearly closing the gap with baseball, and that's before the full influence of the league's breakout superstar was fully realized. The numbers speak for themselves, signaling the WNBA's rapid rise and undeniable staying power.
So the ratings can equal that on a deal that's not as expensive as the Major League Baseball deal, and with rights that ESPN already has, and with games that were already airing on Sundays often, they just slide it into that time slot. Now the CBA, as you see the subhead there, that's the big remaining question, is whether or not they get a CBA done in time to keep that scheduling. And that's, I've been talking about that ad nauseum, and we shall see. I mean, we're getting up on crunch time here when it comes to that. And CBA.
And the real behind-the-scenes influence of Caitlin Clark becomes clear when you look at the numbers. When she's on the court, viewership doesn't just rise, it skyrockets. This isn't coincidence. It's a direct, undeniable link that positions her as the silent driving force behind this entire media strategy. Her presence alone transforms ordinary games into primetime events, guaranteeing massive ratings surges. This leaked insight into her magnetic pull highlights an unprecedented individual market power in women's sports, making her a non-negotiable factor in every broadcasting decision.
In a vacuum, I think, it's like perfect, almost like culture war stuff, like women's sports being shoved down our throats. How dare you get rid of baseball for the WNBA? And, the NWSL is not there yet as far as being able to replicate those numbers. And they're going to have to, hope that those other sports can continue to garner larger audiences and build. But so there is the branding aspect of it. From ESPN's side, there's certainly a branding aspect of women's sports Sundays that isn't quite as clean a fit as like if it was WNBA on
ESPN is now deliberately scheduling headline matchups like the Fever facing the Aces in consecutive Sundays and another showdown against the Sky in August. And this isn't a coincidence. It's a calculated move to harness Clark's massive audience pull and maximize her influence across the entire Sunday night lineup. These matchups are designed to create must-see television, strategically pitting her against the league's top teams and stars. By doing so, ESPN ensures that the new women's sports Sundays live up to their viewership potential, highlighting the very best games driven by the biggest names in the league.
It's like the Caitlin Clark being bigger than, what did Nick Wright say the other day? I didn't even cover this because it just felt like a tired topic. Caitlin Clark being the biggest basketball player, under the age of 35 is what he said. This was let me play it for you here. And there was a bunch of backlash to that too. This comment.
Basketball player under the age of 35 years old is Caitlin Clark. The three most famous basketball players right now.
Remember the jaw-dropping season opener between the Fever and the Sky last year on ABC that drew over 2 million viewers? While broadcast networks like ABC operate differently from cable channels like ESPN, that monumental number was undeniable proof of Caitlin Clark's ability to shatter viewership records across any platform. It set the stage for what we're now seeing on Sunday nights, confirming her unparalleled capacity to draw mainstream audiences well beyond traditional sports fans. Any game featuring Clark and the Fever already consistently outpaces other WNBA matchups by a wide margin, and when she's matched against other top stars or marquee teams, projections skyrocket, pushing viewership into uncharted territory. These carefully engineered matchups create a compounding effect, amplifying interest and cementing her status as a ratings juggernaut. This strategy isn't just about audience numbers, it's a shrewd financial play. The WNBA media rights deal costs far less than the old MLB agreement, meaning Clark's immense pull delivers comparable or even higher ratings at a fraction of the cost. For ESPN, it's a win-win, showing that her value extends beyond the court and directly impacts the financial bottom line of major sports broadcasting. However, a looming collective bargaining agreement, CBA negotiation, threatens to disrupt this meticulously planned schedule, and possibly the entire season. With only weeks to resolve it, the stakes couldn't be higher. Powerful outside forces, including ESPN and Nike, who are heavily invested in the WNBA's success, are pushing for a swift resolution. They know Clark's momentum is unstoppable, and any delay could derail the league's growing mainstream presence. Critics tried to frame ESPN's move as virtue signaling or an attack on traditional sports fans, but insider reports reveal the truth. This was pure business strategy. The backlash ignored the hard financial logic and undeniable viewership data, twisting a smart corporate decision into a culture war narrative. Within ESPN's new Women's Sports Sundays lineup, the WNBA stands as the crown jewel. Its combination of established credibility and rising star power, anchored by Clark, makes it the clearest, most compelling choice to fill the vacated Sunday night slot. The league's growing popularity, fueled by its top talent, ensures that this isn't just programming. It's a seismic shift in how women's sports dominate prime time. The WNBA isn't just a piece of the puzzle, it's the undeniable centerpiece. When Nick Wright famously claimed that Caitlin Clark is the most famous basketball player under 35, it sparked an intense debate. Critics pushed back, but insiders and league insiders alike recognized he was simply stating an uncomfortable truth. That statement, controversial as it was, captured a seismic shift in basketball fame. Clark has become a transcendent figure, rising far beyond the traditional boundaries of women's sports. Wright's comparison to NBA icons like LeBron James and Steph Curry wasn't exaggeration. It was a recognition of her unique ascent into mainstream consciousness. Clark isn't just dominant on the court, her global renown puts her in an entirely new stratosphere of influence, unmatched for a WNBA player entering the league. Even the once ridiculed idea of her starring in Space Jam 3 perfectly illustrates her crossover appeal and cultural cachet. It underscores her ability to transcend basketball itself, becoming a true pop culture phenomenon. People try to confine her legacy, or labeling her as the most famous women's basketball player, but the numbers and cultural conversation tell a different story. Her influence is universal, cutting across gender and redefining what it means to be a global sports star. This clarity also puts ESPN's programming shift into perspective. The network's move wasn't random or misguided. It was a calculated, strategic decision powered entirely by Clark's unprecedented ability to draw viewers and generate buzz. The outrage was misplaced, driven by misunderstanding the business realities and the raw market power of one singular athlete. The facts are undeniable. Even the so-called Miami training camp is less about location and more about metaphor. It represents the WNBA's intense, rapid preparation for a future shaped by Clark's extraordinary market pull. Behind the scenes, it's clear. Her dominance isn't confined to the court. She's forcing networks to adapt, redefining the sports narrative, and ensuring that the WNBA, fueled by her star power, is poised to capture audiences larger than ever before, surpassing all expectations.